Okay, so we're back for another episode out of the box podcast. We've had a lot going on this past week. Gonna dive into, first of all, what happened yesterday. We had our monthly or 6th monthly pit stop meeting. So I think I've talked about this before in previous episodes, but we have our annual meeting where we go through different goals, progress for the last wee while. It's a nice reflection and it always gets people kind of bought into what we're trying to do again. People can air their grievances, but they can also celebrate their wins. And we decided this year to start moving not only just annual, but to do it 6 monthly. And at the same time, as I was reading a book, it started talking about it. So that just reaffirmed what we thought was a good idea. And then as we were progressing towards this, kind of the 6 month pit stop as we're calling it, there was a lot of stuff we decided that wasn't really working well within the business. So the goals that we had signed were a mixture of KPIs as well as just things that are evergreen in the business, we'll always need to produce great content. And so we decided to change how we structured things. So before I've talked about how we have this 3-year goal that had a revenue target attached to it, but we maybe didn't have a huge moonshot goal. And so what we've done is we wrote out essentially a vision that we want to achieve in 10 years time. We broke that down into something for 3 years. And then beneath that we call them pillars that we believe the business will always need. And then below that, annual goals that are attached, one goal to each of those pillars. And the goals kind of match up with closely to the things we have been working on throughout this year. And so on Wednesday, when we had that pit stop meeting at the boat club, we sat down and we talked about how did things go last year or this year. What things have we done well, celebrated them, what things could we do better and the learnings out of the line. And then we talked about really this overall vision and what now the annual goals sit in. So it was really good. As a result, it just reaffirmed a lot of things that maybe were slipping, and we've now put a process in place combined with what I'm going to touch on later on in the episode, OKRs, that are 90-day kind of objectives people will all work towards that filter into those annual goals. So again, I've got this from the Simple Scaling book, and it really made sense when I started going through and trying to reflect on the goals we set at the start of the year. I was I'm not happy with the way I built this process, and I need to find a process that I'm happier with, that is easier for the team to understand and buy into. So that was a bit of self-development in terms of the leadership and trying to figure out what is the best way management-wise to get buy-in from the team. And I think, I'm not saying we're perfect right now, but I think we've made a huge leap forward and will continue to as we evolve this process. So it was a great day, and then afterwards we played a bit of paddle. It was a lot of people's first time, and that was good fun. It was good team bonding, and we learned too it was extremely competitive. One thing though we did during this pit stop meeting was Connor took it as well. So Connor's our head of ops, was a kind of commandments session. So we wanted to derive 4 values, and it's because I wrote on this board as you leave our office revenue targets, but also values underneath them that I think everyone should embody within the organizations. And I wrote them after about 2 minutes of thinking. So there wasn't a lot of thought process went into it. And people walk past them every day, but people forget them. So we did a little exercise around, does anyone actually know the values I wrote on that? And I kind of sat back in this part. I didn't participate. And a few people could get them, but we didn't get all of them. And that kind of shows that they didn't originate from the team. So then we talked about what values do people see is required to be active participant in Shirt in a Box. And people were coming up with some great suggestions. And so we started working on narrowing those down to 4 words, 4 commandments that are reflective of what is expected within the organization. And so that was really great, and it reaffirmed a lot of the stuff I had already thought was true for what it takes to be a team member at Shirt in a Box. And it was very validating for myself to hear that we have a culture now that I'm really proud of and that everyone else is built into. So that was a good exercise. And then the last thing I want to touch on is these OKRs, which I've been working on a good bit. So again, it comes from that book, and I believe these are derived from a place called Intel, and then they've been applied widely into all sorts of organizations. I was mentioning it to my mother, and she was saying she's heard of them in quite a lot of organizations, but like notable examples, I believe, in terms of people who do action them is Google and then Amazon. And it starts real simple. So if you have your annual goal, say acquire customers efficiently, and say the target cost is in there and the amount of scale you want for that efficiency, then if you break that down into 90-day objectives, so it could be, 2 or 3 objectives for each 90 days that help you achieve that goal. So maybe objective 1 is increase the amount of content that we're producing. Objective 2 is test a lot of new things on website. Objective 3 is whitelist more ads. And then beneath those objectives, you have kind of key metrics. So if it's a whitelist more ads, it's maybe whitelist 80% of ads. If it's test more things, it's maybe run 5 tests on the website during this period. And so they're set by the team members who are closest to the information. So rather than being top down and me going, okay, you down there, and when I say down there, I mean in the organizational chart, do this for the next 90 days. It's people who have the most context knowledge suggest this is what I do for the next 90 days. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's much better than the system we had before, where we had people doing 6th month kind of goals that was mainly set from myself or whoever their manager was, and were a bit wishy-washy. There was never really a hard value or metric attached to them. So I'm excited to see how those play out. And we've built the system now within ClickUp. And if you don't know already, ClickUp is our kind of one source of truth that interacts and everyone can see, and there's going to be absolute transparency that you can see anyone else's objectives and what they're working towards over the next 90 days within the organization. So it's super exciting, and I'm excited to see how it plays out the next 60 days. We're slightly late to the quarter, so it won't be the full 90 as normal, but I believe it can be very good for both morale, but knowing how your weekly activities line up to the big goal and then the big vision that we've set. The fact that these kind of 6th monthly, and I don't think you can do them more regularly, kind of check-ins or pit stops are super key if you have a direction that you want to head in. And really, when I reflect on the session we did yesterday and the feedback off it was amazing. I've had 4 or 5 people say it was class. It's so much better than the session we did in January, but at the time in January I was so proud of that session too. And I hope that by the time we arrive at next January session, it's even better and even greater. And it keeps inspiring and motivating people, because I think internally we'd maybe reached a point where there was maybe a lull in mood within the company. And so this kind of the 6th monthly meeting is maybe that sweet spot of where people can kind of some way get distracted or go off topic. And then this meeting just snaps them back in to what is the actual vision, what is the actual goals, what is the actual pillars of this company. So yeah, very rewarding. We were joking that, it's very easy because a session like that is so good. You could think, oh, we need to do this because we did it off-site, as maybe they say. Because it was so rewarding, you could do it every month. And I'm sure there's companies that do, but I think the brilliance of it is that it was a 6th month. I'd recommend it to everyone. But that's me wrapping up.